the day. C'est bon, Benjamin? Tu es prêt? Dear Richard, it's a real pleasure to have this occasion to discuss a bit. It's extremely meaningful to me because, as you may know, I will step aside from my position as a full-time operational of La Quadrature du Net.
Oh, I'm sad to hear it. Why is that?
Oh, no, don't be sad. It's a very good news.
Well, who will do it?
Well, all the fine people you see around are very much willing to do it. And it's a good news for me because people who know me were a bit afraid that I would burn out, so they will be reassured. It's a good thing for me because I will be able to work on various projects and pilot La Quadrature du Net from the board and try to give it a strategic input. And it's a good thing for La Quadrature du Net because we've been structuring it over the last year to make it sustainable and turn it from a one-man army non-structure to a proper scalable structure that we hope to make sustainable. Mm-hmm. So see that as a good news. But it is super meaningful to me because you are a very important inspiration for me. And I can trace back, I told this story recently, the beginning of my political commitment, my political enlightenment in a way, to seeing you in '98 in Paris. And I understood that day that what I thought was a cool, obscure operating system that with my level of knowledge at the time was some kind of more complicated MS-DOS. Please don't shout.
Well, I like to call it MS-DOG.
MS-DOG. That this cool technological tool was actually a project for a better society and a political project. And this is this year that I really figured out what was happening and that I needed to do something. And
that's the point most people don't get.
Yes.
You'll find so many people talking about the GNU plus Linux operating system, and they don't even mention GNU, they call it Linux. And since they don't want to talk about free software, logiciel libre, they don't want to hint at issues of human rights, they will call it open source because that doesn't allude to freedom. And then they will present it purely in terms of advance of technology and convenience and say nothing about things that are more important.
Of course. And it's about political consciousness. It's about understanding the political impact of technology. And so you were right about this 30 years ago. When you founded the GNU project, it was already to show the world that computers and software can be used to either control individuals or to give them more freedom. Do you think that today more and more people are understanding that with the recent revelations of Edward Snowden?
Well, I think that the number of people who appreciate the issue of free versus user subjugating software is growing. However, that's partly because the number of users of computers is growing. And sad to say, most of them are using systems that are jails or tyrants. A large fraction. Actually, I don't know if it's most of them. Android isn't quite as bad as the others, and Android, I guess, is the majority now. So, okay, it's not quite Android as bad as it could be. But a lot of people are using iThings, which are tyrants, meaning they don't allow replacing the operating system, and they're jails, meaning they have censorship of application programs. And then there are the Windows phones, which are just as bad. And they all have the universal backdoor in the radio modem processor, which, as far as we can tell, can take control of the main processor, and thus through the modem processor, whoever activates the universal backdoor can replace your operating system. Whatever you put in it, they can replace it. And they can turn these things into listening devices. It's been done. This is established fact. And put it together, and portable phones are an immense system of tracking people the way Stalin would have loved to do.
Yeah, I try to stop calling them phones myself because they're actually computers.
They are
The computers
yeah.
with an extra spying chip, this baseband chip, the modem chip you just mentioned. But you're jumping ahead of my
Okay.
planet, so it's a good thing.
So the point is, the size of the problem we have to correct is growing. Meanwhile, aside from what goes on in your own computer, there's the question of the internet and digital systems that don't belong to you. And more those are designed to keep track of people, which is wrong. That's why I don't pay with credit cards, why I don't have a mobile phone. And I don't identify myself when I connect to the internet. I refuse to connect to the internet in a way that has my name in a database.
Interesting. I want to come back to many of the technological aspects you mentioned, including maybe Android. But I'm really curious to know your view about the political situation we are in right now. And do you want to put that on?
No, I want to show people the button that's on it. If I can
yeah, sure.
find, here it is.
Be careful with the microphone.
It says, "Don't be tracked, pay cash."
Yes, that's one way of trying to avoid. On the political level, I'm very much curious about this notion of commitment. You know, how it happens in individuals. How somebody who believes one day that he or she has nothing to hide could the next day become a political activist. How somebody who think...
Why do you think that you need to have something to hide to fight for privacy rights? Most days I don't have anything to hide. I'm not fighting for my secrets. I'm fighting for your secrets, for everyone's.
It's not as much about having anything to hide than understanding the very value of privacy and why it must be protected. And this you don't really learn at school. You don't see it on TV. What do you think is useful or powerful to make people understand how crucial are those links between the technology and the underlying communication infrastructure?
Lots of people have something they want to hide from someone, and without privacy, you can't do that. But beyond that, democracy involves opposition, dissidents, and whistleblowers. There's a famous question, who will watch the watchman?
Quis custodiet
Ipsos custodes.
Custodes.
Well, now we know the answer. Whistleblowers watch the watchman. Democracy means that the people maintain control of the state. This is essential because the state is the most powerful entity that we come in contact with.
It's not Google.
No, the state is much more powerful than Google. The state has lots of armed men and doesn't even have to hide their existence. They are not limited to moving around secretly underground. They can go anywhere.
But Google has killer robots now.
I don't know if that's true.
With the acquisition of Boston Dynamics, that is a US military contractor.
Maybe, but Google wouldn't dare use them without permission of the state. Google may become an arms company, but that's not the same as being the state.
That's true.
I mean, these are flip responses. Why? They just get in the way of saying the point. The point is that the state can do us far more harm than any other entity. People are tremendously afraid of underground terrorist groups, but they can't possibly do the kind of harm that the state could do because they are not as powerful. They're far, far less powerful. A state can kill millions.
And did already, yeah.
And some states have, yeah. So the point is we've got to maintain our control over the state so it doesn't do that. We must have the state because we need a welfare state. We need social programs that can only be carried out by the state. We need regulations that can only be on business activities that can only be implemented by the state. Not to mention things like investigating crimes and national defense and
education.
Education, healthcare, all sorts of activities, funding research and not allowing it to be corrupted, which private funding for research tends to do. So we've got to have a state, but we've got to make sure that it doesn't become rogue and start attacking the people. For that, we need democratic control. But in order to control the state, we need to know what the state does. However, states tend to do things secretly. How can we maintain any control over them? Through whistleblowers. So democracy requires whistleblowers. But whistleblowers are greatly deterred if they will be caught and punished. And the state tends to call whistleblowers criminals and try to crush them by any means possible.
Yes. We see that with Chelsea Manning being jailed for 35 years.
Yes.
With Snowden being chased.
Yes, exactly.
With Assange being
with John
Ecuadorian
Kiriakou as well, who has been jailed for telling Americans that the government was torturing.
And Jeremy Hammond, Barrett Brown, also in very difficult situation right now. We have a...
Right, but listen to me. The point is that how can we have whistleblowers if whistleblowers are persecuted? But the state, in order to persecute them, needs to find them. That's why surveillance of our communications endangers democracy. When the level of general surveillance of everyone's activities reaches the point at which the state can generally find whistleblowers, democracy can't function. Therefore, we must reduce the general level of surveillance to the point where the state can no longer generally find whistleblowers, which means we have to redesign digital systems to the point where they don't collect enough information for the state to use it to find the whistleblowers. The state must not be able to tell who has spoken with a journalist, not even who has spoken with a particular journalist. It has to be impossible to tell, so that the state can't find these people and persecute them. Now, when people start condemning general surveillance, as is happening now in the US, it has become a real political issue with bills being considered in Congress. But the usual suggestion, the change that's usually proposed, is to limit the state's access to the databases which are often collected by companies. This is not enough. And the reason is the conditions for access to the database will always permit it when the state says it's investigating a crime and can point to a crime that it's investigating. Well, if whistleblowing is a crime, then the state will be able to get permission from a court to access the databases and find the whistleblower. So this change, while it would be an improvement, is not enough. We've got to change the systems. There have to be laws requiring systems to be designed so that they don't accumulate data. They don't accumulate a dossier about everyone. And then, even if the state gets permission to look to try to find a whistleblower, the data won't have been saved. It won't be possible to find the whistleblower. This is what we need.
So in a way, what you said is that the whistleblowers are the ones who watch the watchmen, and we, internet society, should watch the whistleblowers. To make sure
we don't want to watch
safe.
them. We have to protect them.
To watch them in the sense of to
we
watch
have to
after
protect them.
To watch after them.
Well, you don't say watch after in English.
No,
you have to
okay.
say, you can say look after.
Look after. Oh yeah.
But
okay.
it's better to say protect. That's
okay.
clearer.
So we need to protect them, and we can.
But the way we protect them is by making sure they can retain their anonymity. You see, if there's a law saying whistleblowers are inviolate, the government can come up with an excuse to ignore that. They're very good at coming up with excuses to prosecute someone. With John Kiriakou, they didn't prosecute him for whistleblowing. They looked through all his email, and they found some place where he mentioned the name of a CIA agent, and they prosecuted him for that, although it wasn't published.
There are ways to protect whistleblowers, maybe by law. There are ways to protect whistleblowers by technology. And there are probably social, cultural mechanisms that we must put in place so people understand.
The social mechanism is simply strong support for human rights and democracy and recognition of what it requires. Social patterns can't protect somebody very well from a manhunt. So you can't expect that to do the job. Active technology such as Tor may help, but it's not really enough. What we need is to put an end to the general surveillance that tracks everyone's communications and just about everyone's movements. We are surveilled far more than the inhabitants of the Soviet Union were. Is that a good thing? Should we have more surveillance than the Soviet Union had, or should we have less? That's the fundamental question. We shouldn't look for ways to reconcile ourselves to completely intolerable levels of surveillance. We've got to get rid of it. We have to firmly say to all governments, so much surveillance that you can tell who speaks with whom is an injustice in itself. We will not tolerate it. We're going to stop you from doing it. We don't care what justification you offer, because whatever problem it's supposed to solve is less dangerous than the problem it is.
It's well put. You announced, so this year was 2013 was the year of the 30th anniversary of the GNU project. And you announced at the 30th anniversary that now among the objectives of the Free Software Foundation will be, if I understand correctly, to fight surveillance and to protect
with technology to the extent it can be done that way.
So can you tell us a bit more about what it means for the Free Software Foundation?
It means developing peer-to-peer communication software that uses encryption so that there is no server which is a centralized point of surveillance.
So now this is officially one of the goals?
That's one of our goals.
Are you changing in some way the structure of the Free Software Foundation?
No, there's no structure to change.
So are you
Our structure is actually very decentralized.
Okay.
There are many GNU packages being developed by different groups of people.
So it means reordering the priorities in the
yes,
projects?
well, it means just saying to the public, we'd like you to work on this. That's all we... Directly, that's all we can do anyway. The work we do in software development is whatever volunteers decide to do for us. So what we can directly do is just invite and encourage.
And so what
thus, I hope that people watching this will get involved with GNU software development, things like GNU-net, GNU SecuShare, GNU Social.
So that was exactly my next question. What do you think, well, that's an answer for the GNU project. What do you think are the most promising technologies that are being developed
I'm the
right
wrong
now?
person to ask, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm not an expert on encryption.
Okay.
But as I said, it's a mistake to think we can protect ourselves from massive surveillance by active technological self-defense. It can't do the job.
Yeah.
Lampposts now sometimes have microphones. In buses, there are microphones in San Francisco. In Australia, in some cities, the taxis have microphones. I once was in such a city. I saw on the door a sign saying, you will be photographed and your voice will be recorded. So I didn't speak. I refused to speak. I wrote on a piece of paper, "Don't speak. Cab is bugged. Please take me to such and such address." And I handed it to the driver, and he laughed because he got the joke. He got the point. The point is, I wasn't going to give them anything they could listen to. But if they're listening everywhere, how can you have any conversation that's private? Yeah. Really, we have to stop them from putting in the recording devices. We have to make them remove the recording devices. We have to insist that systems ranging from cameras that look at the street and maybe recognize car license numbers to the carte Navigo in the metro and similar equivalents in other cities.
RFID chips. Yeah.
We have to make sure that they don't know who is doing what, except in special cases. For instance, recognizing license plates, it should have a list of all the valid license plates. And if the court orders surveillance of a particular car, then they can remove that number from the list. And any car that's in the list is invisible. The camera just won't notice. It will make a record of where it sees any other car. But those are invisible. Wherever they go, they're not followed.
We will need to trust the technology. We will trust the
right.
The
but the point is, well, but you can tell, right? Anyone using it will be able to tell if it is making records of other cars. So, so it's not as if a dishonest system could be hidden so easily. We've got to make sure that there are no internet-accessible cameras fixed pointing at public places, because those are basically asking for the state to watch everywhere. There should be a law that such systems cannot be installed, that any security camera watching a public place can't be on the internet. It has to record internally, and that's all.
So
that it's difficult to access. You see, if the information is held locally and difficult to access, then when there's a real reason, it can be accessed. But it can't be accessed all the time because it would cost too much. So that's a protection for our privacy against general surveillance, but not against court-ordered specific surveillance.
Exactly. That's a difference that is, I think, extremely important to make. Is that some targeted surveillance can be legitimate if properly framed democratically.
We've got to make sure that it's only targeted surveillance under the control of the courts.
Of the judicial authority.
Because we want the state to investigate crimes. But we don't want to allow the state to have so much information that it can always catch the culprit of every crime, because then it will also catch all dissidents and all whistleblowers, and we don't have democracy anymore.
You mentioned this this hardware and software system that would look at the license plates, for instance. And I wrote
not would, they do.
That do.
They exist.
Yeah. But those that would be targeted surveillance devices instead of mass surveillance devices. And it raises the question, we are now understanding, everybody start to understand what you were saying for so many years, is that the part of the solution to mass surveillance on a technological level is to get away from those hyper-centralized services, from the closed-down systems.
I don't call them closed down. Let's not use the words open or closed when we're talking about free software,
so those the jailed systems, or the illusion of security that relies on delegating trust.
All non-free software has zero security against its developer. For instance, Windows has zero security against Microsoft.
Therefore, the NSA.
And, right, because Microsoft, according to Bloomberg News, shows the NSA the security flaws in Windows before it fixes them. So Windows has zero security against the US government, but, you know, Windows also has a universal backdoor. This means that Microsoft can cause a Windows system to load changes in software by remote control, and thus it can do absolutely anything.
Same with
to that
Apple.
machine.
Same with Apple.
I don't
and
know
macOS.
if that, I don't know if that's
Oh,
true.
yeah,
Do you know? Is there proof?
Yes. The iTunes updater, through which everything is being updated on the system, has this silent upgrade function that you cannot disable.
Oh, can you show me an article to
sure.
prove
Sure.
this? Because I never heard this
It
before.
has been documented years ago
Please
as the
show me.
iTunes updater bug.
Please show me.
Apple never
I've
fixed.
never heard this before.
And it's so interesting that Finfisher, that company from the Gamma Group that sells to police services and other entities across the world software to monitor what's on your screen, what's on your keyboard, what's in your webcam. It was shown in one of the videos in the spy files on WikiLeaks that they use this iTunes updater as a way of entry. They do this installation proxy that use this iTunes installer bug. So it is evidence that the behavior of this company is enabling surveillance.
Wow. I'd never heard this before.
Oh, I'll send you details
I'll be
about
very
that.
interested in publicizing this.
Well, the point is that Microsoft, Apple, it's the same.
Well, Apple's actually the worst enemy of our freedom.
Yes.
Remember, it's Apple that pioneered general-purpose computers that are jails, in other words, platforms for censorship of application programs. The evil genius of Steve Jobs was to have figured out how to make computers that are jails and make millions of people beg to be jailed.
Jail systems are one of the roots of mass surveillance.
Actually, no. Non-free software is part of the root of mass surveillance.
Yes.
Because being a jail is actually, well, it's another evil, but it's not the evil that brings you mass surveillance. That happens with non-free software already, because with non-free software it means the users don't have control over it. With any program, either the users control the program or the program controls the users. With free software, the users control the program. With users subjugating non-free software, the program controls the users. So even before Microsoft and Apple systems were jails, they were proprietary software, non-free. And surveillance functionalities have been found in Windows. Windows on a PC is not a jail, but it is proprietary, and it has spyware functionalities. But many other proprietary programs are spyware, including Flash Player, Angry Birds, the Amazon Swindle, and the software in portable phones, which sends GPS location data on remote command and the user can't stop it. So basically, when the program is proprietary, that means the users don't control it, therefore it controls the users, and the owner controls the program. So that program is an instrument giving the owner power over the users, power that no one should have, so it's unjust power. That has always been true. 30 years ago, when I started the free software movement, I didn't know how to formulate the issue like this, but it was true already. However, 30 years ago, you could expect the proprietary software developers to be honest. At least they developed the program to try to make it do what users would like. And it was a shocking, rare exception if they put in anything malicious. You know, it was a scandal. But gradually...
Bull Run.
What?
Now the Bull Run program that was unveiled, where we see the NSA investing $250 million a year to sabotage all the commercial technologies that are supposed to protect user communication.
It's not just the NSA. It started long before the NSA. The point is, you know, in the 90s, it was already starting to happen. And what happened was companies started putting malicious functionalities into programs, and the users didn't all say, we reject this, we're going elsewhere. And therefore they got away with it. It was known they got away with it, so other companies started doing likewise. And the ethical standards went down, and then it went down again and again, to the point where nowadays it's normal to find malicious functionalities in proprietary software. They spy, they restrict the users, which is known as digital handcuffs or digital restrictions management, DRM, and there are backdoors. And the result is, before the NSA even started to get interested in this, the companies were already turning proprietary software massively into systems to mistreat the users.
Actually,
so basically, proprietary software is software for suckers.
Information suckers and suckers in general. Today there were revelations, I think it came from the Der Spiegel, where Jake Applebaum, Andy Muller-Magoon, Laura Poitras and others are doing this fantastic job of documenting the technology of surveillance and oppression. There were revelations about how the apps on the jailed mobile computers, how the apps were used to send back information, and that each upgrade I think each upgrade of Android is sending 500 lines of history of what the phone was doing, what it was used for, etc. And indeed, intelligence agencies access.
Well, Android is not a jail.
Well,
keep these issues are not exactly the same. They don't go hand in hand. Android is not a jail.
I would slightly disagree, if I may.
Android, I'm told, allows people to install programs of their own choice.
No, not by default on most instances, where you cannot even be root of your device without rooting it, which means making a bit of a complex technical operation.
Yeah, you can, but you can do it.
Yeah, but my mom wouldn't do it because she wouldn't know how to, and she would be too afraid of breaking it. And it's not all mobile computers that allow you to do that. So by default...
Sorry, I spoke with an expert, namely a developer of Replicant. Replicant is the free version of Android, who says that in general, Android is not a jail. You can install free applications from places like F-Droid.
Oh yeah, sure. I do this myself. I do this all the time.
But that's different from being entirely free software.
Yes.
Android, as it comes in any product, is not a jail, but it contains proprietary software. In particular, Google Play, I believe it is, which is what connects to the Android market,
yes.
is proprietary software. So, of course, any proprietary program is likely to mistreat you. And some Android devices are tyrants, meaning they don't allow replacing the operating system.
Yeah.
These are generally, in many cases, these are the ones that are locked to a phone company.
My point was there is a difference. Indeed, you can do that with many Android terminals. This is what I do. You'd be proud. I use 100% free software.
Oh, do you use Replicant then?
No, because
well, then you haven't gone totally to free software.
I didn't finish my sentence. Is that I use 100% free software in the space in which I have quite an easy control and access, which is mostly user-land.
But you need to move to Replicant.
I know, and I will soon, because I'm aware that a very important part of the problem is those parts of the hardware we cannot really control, for which there is no free software driver. And what I've seen when you describe this rise of proprietary software going against the user, in the same period of time, we went from, when I was younger, I had a computer that was a friendly machine. That was a machine I could open and understand what it was doing, that came with a documentation that allowed us to hack, understand it, and push its limits further.
What year was that?
With the 8-bit machines, the Amstrad CPC.
What year was this?
85, 87,
yeah, I guess
89.
back then they were.
And since then, there was a slow drift. When I saw you in 98 and understood the political link between technology and freedom, I was born and I was raised with my technological education in this era of the friendly machines. And we slowly drifted to this era of the enemy machines. Those machines we have in our pockets work against us.
Well, not in mine.
not in yours.
Not in mine.
That people have in their pockets.
You shouldn't say we, right?
You're right.
Because every time you say that we do this thing, you're endorsing the practice. And that basically says to people, of course no one would expect you to refuse. Well, I refuse.
Yeah, you're right.
And you should refuse. Everyone should refuse.
Of course. So those devices that people carry in their pockets,
some people carry
in their pockets, increasingly now do not allow them to even remove the battery.
Right,
to
that's
be sure
to make sure they're always
off.
listening.
Yes, exactly. And some of the hardware we still cannot control with free software. And to me, this is becoming an increasing concern. Is there such a thing as free hardware? Is this an area on which
we
should
want to
work?
apply the concept, the same concept of free that applies to software to hardware, let's see what it will mean. Free software concretely means that the program comes with 4 essential freedoms. Freedom 0 is the freedom to run the program as you wish. Freedom 1 is the freedom to study the source code and change it so it does your computing as you wish. Freedom 2 is the freedom to make and distribute exact copies. Freedom 3 is the freedom to make and distribute copies of your modified versions. So with freedom 0 and 1, users separately have control over the program. With freedoms 2 and 3 as well, groups of users are free to cooperate in exercising control over the program. Well, let's apply this concept to hardware. You find pretty soon that it doesn't make any sense because there are no copiers for chips or circuit boards. But what you can have is a free hardware design. The question is it any use? Can you turn that hardware design into a computer? Is it reasonably feasible? Well, for a chip, no. For a chip, with today's technology, we are dependent on factories to make our chips. With circuit boards, you can do it, but it's a lot of work to make each one, to the point where it's almost prohibitive, but not quite. But this may change. So, free hardware designs don't give us as much control as free software does. But free hardware designs are good because we may be able to verify the hardware that's made by a factory against the design and thus see that it doesn't have any malicious additions. And then, since people can check the design, they can see that the hardware is not malicious, not corrupted by the NSA or any other country's secret agencies. After all, you know, in France, the government can now legally listen to anything. There are no restrictions.
With the loi de programmation militaire, yes.
So France is now is now a total surveillance state. And French will have to organize to demand correction of this. But anyway, so free hardware with today's technology is important, but doesn't directly give us the same control over hardware that free software gives us over software that we use. But the technology may advance.
So, for instance, today there is almost no Wi-Fi chip that we can use
There's
with free software.
Atheros.
Yes, but it's not very common. And I
was
wondering...
so get it anyway.
Of course.
Maybe you need to get an external Wi-Fi device. I've done that. The point is, if some of the hardware in your machine can't function in the free world, that's not a reason to install a non-free program. It's a reason to do without that particular piece of hardware and find some other solution.
I agree. Can you tell us about your Lemote computer? It's quite uncommon. Lemote?
Well, you should think of remote with a Chinese accent.
Lemote, okay.
Well, it uses a free BIOS and free drivers and a totally free GNU plus Linux operating system. That's why I chose it, but it's not made anymore.
Oh. My next question was, how can I get one?
Well, you can't, but you can order a reconditioned
X60
ThinkPad that works with free BIOS and free system from Glug.
Glug, yeah, in the UK.
Yeah.
But GCHQ has jurisdiction over Glug in the UK.
So?
No, I'm mostly joking here. Yeah, I heard of, what's the name again of this? Core Boot is the free software BIOS.
Yes.
Right? I've heard that you could install it on an X60. And this is, I think, what I will do for my own communications in the future. But thinking about it, the X60 is now a platform that is about 10 years old.
Well, it's better than nothing.
Oh, sure.
This is the first computer product that we have been able to endorse ever. The first computer product you could buy with all free software.
And so
this was normally sold with non-free software in it. Yeah, you could buy it and you could replace the system. That's what we did. But we couldn't endorse it. So this is progress.
Of course.
You know, if it's not as much as you'd like, please keep in mind that it's much better than the situation in the past.
Of course it is.
But yeah, we would like a modern computer to be built that runs with all free software. So there is a design developed by Bunny Huang, which almost runs without non-free software. The problem is it has a video processor that can only be run with a non-free program.
And you cannot deactivate
Well, you can deactivate it. You can not install the firmware for that video processor, but we can't endorse it unless all the hardware works with free software, because otherwise it will basically be an attraction for people to install the non-free program that isn't there. And we don't want to fool ourselves. We don't want to endorse a product that is obviously incomplete and is going to attract most people to install a non-free program. It would be self-delusion to say that that's a product that respects your freedom. So, what's needed? Reverse engineering is needed. People have got to reverse engineer that video processing unit and then publish the specs. The same people who reverse engineer the VPU shouldn't write a replacement program. Other people will do that. The people who figure out how to run that hardware just have to publish what they've learned about that hardware. And they can publish it anonymously so that they don't ever have to worry about whether the company would try to harass them somehow.
I wasn't saying that about the X60 to say that things are not good, and I agree, we are making progress, especially that people are increasingly understanding the political implication of technology. This is really, for me, the key. What I was mentioning that for is that this reconditioned X60 is a 10 years old hardware.
Yeah.
Does it mean we are 10 years late in a way?
Maybe, but better late than never.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Remember,
of course.
30 years ago, we started from zero.
Yeah, exactly. So we are progressing. What do you think are the most important or the most difficult challenges that we have ahead, whether it's in the hardware or the software or the network?
I can't judge them, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Asking me to take these things that are totally different, they're different kinds of things, and just measure their difficulty, I don't know, and I don't really care. Because I just look at the things that need to be done. I'd rather talk about what needs to be done.
What needs to be done? For instance, in the software area, what are the areas where we need manpower, we need energy?
Well, we need better free CAD software. We need free accounting software that's interoperable, which again requires reverse engineering. Both CAD and accounting software require reverse engineering to figure out the formats used by the market-dominating, non-free programs that try to keep their users captive. We also need, of course, the firmware and driver replacements for lots of hardware. We need schools to stop teaching proprietary software. The school has a social mission to educate good citizens for a strong, capable, independent, cooperating, and free society. For a school to teach kids to use non-free software is implanting dependence on a private entity which is completely antisocial. It should be illegal for schools to do that. There must be no non-free software in a school where kids can find it, except in reverse engineering practice. Of course, since every program embodies knowledge, if it's a free program, the students can learn this knowledge, but if it's proprietary, the knowledge is withheld from the students. So a proprietary program is the enemy of the spirit of education. It's an obstacle to those who are interested in programming and want to master the skill, the craft of programming. You do that by reading lots of code and writing lots of code. Well, only free software gives you the chance to read the code of large programs we really use. And then to learn how to write the code for large programs, you've got to write code in large programs. But you've got to start with existing large programs at first until you get really good at it. So only free software gives you the chance to write changes in existing large programs that we really use. Schools, for the sake of those who want to master the craft of programming, must be environments of free software, of knowledge that the students are welcome to learn. But in addition, schools must teach the spirit of goodwill, the habit of helping others. This is education and citizenship. Therefore, every class must have this rule. Students, if you bring software to class, you may not keep it for yourself. You must share it with the rest of the class, including source code, in case someone here wants to learn, because this class is a place where we share our knowledge. Therefore, it's not permitted to bring proprietary software to class except for reverse engineering practice. And the school must follow its own rule to set a good example. So we must legislate that schools may not have proprietary software except for reverse engineering practice, which of course would only start probably at age 13 in most cases.
So maybe we will see that emerge somewhere in Latin America before you're
Well, Ecuador already has
working
the project of moving its schools to free software.
Do you think public school should teach children how to code, how to do network, how to understand communication?
Most people don't want to do this. This is specialized knowledge that some people are interested in. You might as well say we should teach everyone to do accounting and be a painter and
But
most people will not be good at programming. It's a special talent, just as most people will not be good painters. I wouldn't be a good painter, right? I don't have any talent for that. I have other talents like programming and puns.
You have,
but
you have hidden talents.
But the point is, just because I found programming to be a great pleasure doesn't lead me to conclude that everyone's supposed to do programming. You know, there's a tendency for people who love a particular activity to say, oh, of course you should all do this. It's such great fun. Try it. You'll certainly love it. But I know better. Different people love different things. Schools should make it easy to learn programming. They should invite people to get to the depths of programming if they want to. But not everyone's going to want to. You can't say that nowadays everyone has to be able to program. It's like saying everyone has to be able to do algebra. Not everyone wants to do algebra. I love calculus. I love group theory because I love mathematics, but not everyone does.
My point was more how can you be a citizen aware of what is going on in this world if you don't have a minimum knowledge?
A minimum knowledge won't get you anywhere. It just won't help.
I mean, a minimum knowledge of the architecture of our information infrastructure.
There is something you need to know, and that is there are different computers involved in activities, and you need to know what part of what I'm doing is done in my computer and is under my control, because of course you shouldn't allow any non-free software to run in your computer, and what part is being done in someone else's computer, and whose computer is it, and where is it, and what data is it collecting about me.
And how
Those are the things people need to pay attention to.
And how can you get this knowledge?
Well, you need to, people need to demand it, and eventually laws will be required, enforced by the state, to make whoever runs servers tell you. The point is, you don't need to know how to program to understand this kind of thing. Of course, there have to be much stricter legal limits on what data they can keep and who's allowed to have any of it. Right now, if you visit a website, several companies are likely to get personal data about you just because you looked at the home page of that site without typing anything at it, without clicking anything on it. The fact that you visited that page gives personal data about you to various companies whose business is tracking people. Well, that should be illegal. The company whose page it is, the organization more generally whose page it is, should not be allowed to set up that page so that anybody else gets any data about you.
You can see that very well using the free software NoScript, for instance, in Iceweasel or
but
Firefox.
even NoScript won't block it all. For instance, if you see a Facebook like button,
of course,
Facebook knows your computer visited that page because the image of the like button comes from a Facebook server. And the server knows which IP address it sent the image to. And your browser tells the server, I'm requesting this image for the following page. So Facebook knows your computer visited that page. And that's personal information about you when you didn't go look at Facebook. This has to be illegal.
And if you happen to have a Facebook account, then Facebook knows it's you with your identity.
Right.
So this raises a question.
And I just saw today, I haven't seen the article yet, but I saw just the abstract of it, that logging into any site through Facebook means Facebook gives the site a lot of personal data as well.
Of course.
I mean, this is, of course, Facebook could be called Zuckerberg because Facebook is a monstrous surveillance engine. Look at stallman.org/facebook.html for why you shouldn't buy from, you shouldn't do business with Facebook, shouldn't be a used of Facebook. And look at stallman.org/amazon.html for why you shouldn't buy from Amazon.
You mentioned those pieces of software that we execute from a remote computer. It is a global trend today in the use of computing in general, sometimes not to know, sometimes not to even care where the software is being executed. So this is something that wasn't the case in '83 when the GNU project was
It's a terrible mistake for the users.
Yes.
You can't trust software that's executed straight from someone else's site. Basically, the users need to take control over that software. The first step is for it to be free software. Usually it's proprietary software. And obviously you can't trust proprietary software. But that's just the first step because the users need to start really exercising control over that software, meaning being able to have their changes to it control what it does and what it doesn't do. Partly, though, this needs laws. It should be illegal, for instance, for a site to collect statistics about its visitors and how they visit the site by sending data about all the visits to a company like Google, which is called Google Analytics. Many websites send all the data about their visitors to Google.
Or Google AdWords, or the Google Plus button that is the equivalent of the Facebook button.
Actually, it's not quite equivalent.
Really?
I asked once, and I was told the Google Plus button has a long cache time. So if you go to lots of sites, according to what I was told, and they all have the plus buttons, Google doesn't find out about most of those pages. It just uses the same image that's already in your browser cached. Well, I have to agree that that makes it a lot less of a problem. If Google's not finding out all the sites that you visit through that button, it's okay.
The way Moglen puts it is that we are losing our anonymity in reading. I think it's a very interesting way of putting it.
The Amazon swindle, which is an e-reader that swindles readers out of their freedom, monitors exactly what page is being read at any time, as well as what books the user obtains. Of course, Amazon won't let people buy anything anonymously, which is why I won't buy anything from Amazon. I won't identify myself to websites. So you've got to reject these things.
Of course. Of course. A question that is a bit of a general question, and I don't want you to be exhaustive about it, but that I think is important to...
I'm exhausted already.
What can people do to help? To help make the world a better place, to help take back control of technology?
Well, first of all, look at GNU.org/help for suggestions for how you can help the free software movement. Now, one way is by programming, but there are many other ways. You don't have to be a programmer to help advance our movement. There are free software activists who are not programmers. You can do a lot. But,
for instance, what can you do to help free software?
Well, you can organize people to campaign. That's tremendously important. You can learn how to present these issues and give speeches.
Write documentation as well.
Yes, exactly.
Graphic design, web design.
Yep. You can join organizations such as the Free Software Foundation, or Free Software Foundation Europe, or April, or La Quadrature du Net, or whatever there is in your country, wherever you are. You can, however, more generally, because free software protects you from having your own technology perverted to spy on you or restrict you or attack you, but it doesn't protect you from other systems that aren't yours. So you need to organize politically to demand an end to general surveillance.
And
away with the excuses. We don't trust the authorities with power like the Soviet Union had.
And how do you think, what would you recommend to somebody who would like to start doing it right now and wouldn't know how to do it, to get committed to politically change things? And
find an existing organization and support it is the easiest way. There are organizations that champion limiting surveillance. Unfortunately, most of them don't act against the collection of the data. They mainly campaign to limit government's use of the data, and as I said, that's not enough. Look at GNU.org/philosophy/surveillance vs democracy.html, and you'll see why, you'll see more clearly and fully stated why it's not enough to limit the government's use of databases that are held privately. We have to limit all the ways that the government collects information about everyone.
A question that is a bit of a troll, to react to what you just said, that people could or should join existing organizations. Aren't we at risk of centralizing political
it's good
action?
To centralize it. Lots of people together in one organization can achieve a lot more because they contribute their dues. The organization can hire organizers, hire lawyers, and thus achieve more.
Aren't there also maybe new ways of doing
I don't know.
decentralized political
I don't
action?
know.
Because you've seen the SOPA, PIPA, and the ACTA fights.
But those were carried out by organizations with substantial membership.
Yes.
We need organizations with substantial membership.
It's true.
I'm sorry,
also,
but I don't think that you can achieve a lot politically just by doing everything by yourself.
It's not just...
I didn't do everything by myself. I launched a movement where I recruited other people to join in, and thousands of people have, and that's why we've achieved. You can't expect that thousands of people, each one operating by himself, will achieve a lot. It just doesn't work that way in politics.
It's not just being alone, but those organizations, this is what we did with la Quadrature du Net on ACTA, those organizations sometimes play a role when they provide means of action, they provide way for individuals who may not want to join an organization to still be active and find ways to participate.
That is participating in the existing organization.
Okay.
Those people would not have achieved as much if they hadn't acted through the means set up by organizations. But in order to set up these means, the organizations need people. So participating through the means set up on the net by an organization is a way you can achieve a substantial amount with a small amount of work. If you want to do more than a small amount of work, we need people who are willing to do a lot of work. Of course, there will be more people who do a small amount of work. Yes, I agree it's useful to set up ways people can contribute, each one giving a small amount of work. But to do that, you need people who are going to do a lot of work. If you really care, you've got to do a lot of work.
That's what we've been doing for some years now.
Right, but we need more.
Yeah.
Don't imagine that we're going to win by having only a lot of people who do a little bit of work. Freedom sometimes requires a sacrifice, and sometimes requires working hard for a long time. If you say, I want freedom as long as it's easy, you can't expect to keep your freedom, let alone regain it. It's a myth that people believe nowadays. I want freedom, but my concentration is on making money. I can give a little bit to freedom. No. You're going to have to look for a way to live with somewhat less money so you've got time to dedicate to something that matters.
That's very good advice. We have a question from the audience. Who would you consider to be an inspiring person for you?
Well, various people who have stood for causes have inspired me more or less. I could give a long list of names.
Maybe a short one.
Most people have not heard of Dr. Ambedkar, who was the leader of India's untouchables, who campaigned for their rights and won a certain amount, but didn't ultimately win enough. But he did everything he could.
So that's all for the list?
Well, I don't want to give a long list.
Okay.
You've heard of a lot of people who've campaigned for freedom, who've influenced me to some extent. Once I was walking around in Paris with a friend, and I saw a cinema, and it said, Celui qui a dit non. And I said, is that a film about me? No, it was about General de Gaulle. Well, we both said no.
Yes. So I think we made it. It's a real pleasure and an honor. I want to thank you for everything you've done for us. It's you're an inspiration of us, a very important one, and yeah, very happy we could do this. Thank you, Richard.